Columbus to the Colonies. A New World in the Americas. Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, and he landed in the Bahamas. As soon as news of the discovery made it back home, Spain and Portugal raced to claim as much of the New World as they could. By the 1530s, the two empires had claimed the majority of North, Central, and South America. It would be another 100 years before other European nations like England, France, and the Netherlands decided to stake a claim in the New World. By then, not much territory was left to explore, settle, and colonize, but England was able to claim a huge territory on the east coast of North America. By 1670, English colonists lived all along the Atlantic coast of what is now the United States. The 3 Gs. Exploring new lands isn't cheap, and it isn't easy. What motivated nations like England to colonize the New World? 3 words can sum it up: gold, God, and glory. Gold refers to the money Europeans hoped to make from resources and opportunities in the new territory. God represents the religious reasons colonists came to the New World. Many were looking for a place where they could freely practice their religion. Many also hoped to convert Native Americans to Christianity. That leaves glory, also known as bragging rights. Kings and queens across Europe wanted to show off how powerful they were by controlling vast expanses of land across the Atlantic. Where's the gold? Wealthy individuals looking to make a profit sponsored the first settlements in North America. They formed companies that outfitted explorers and settlers to go strike it rich in the new land. They quickly discovered the eastern part of North America didn't have gold and silver like South America did, but the continent made up for it in other natural resources. Rich farmlands supported cash crops like tobacco, endless forests provided timber for shipbuilding, and the woodland was rich in furs for trade back in Europe. These products helped build communities of merchants and planters that would shape and govern colonial society. Help wanted, like it or not. Exploiting natural resources is hard work, and the colonists needed labor. The first labor came from indentured servants who agreed to work in America for a number of years in exchange for travel and expenses and a place to live. Colonial landowners paid these costs, and the servants came over hoping for better opportunities in the long run. But this voluntary migration didn't produce enough labor. Soon the colonists turned to forced migration, taking people away from Africa and forcing them to work as slaves in America. Slaves had no hope of ever achieving wages or freedom. What about the Native Americans? Some were trading partners, some were used as slaves. It often depended on the tribal politics in different times and places, and on how the European colonists worked with tribal leaders. Religious freedom? England in the 1600s had a lot of conflict among different versions of Christianity. The official religion was the Church of England, but not everyone belonged to it. Other Christian groups included Catholics and various Protestant Christians, both of whose beliefs differed from the Church of England. Some groups faced hostility in England, and their members looked to America for a place to practice their religion in peace. However, that didn't mean they thought others should enjoy the same peace. In the New World, religious settlers created 2 types of colonies, one with strict religious rules and ones without. Our colony, our rules. English groups that established colonies for religious reasons set up their own rules for the colony. Check out these examples. The Massachusetts Bay Colony was established in 1630 by Puritans, a religious group that had been harassed and punished by the English government. In America, they set up a colony with very strict rules. Colonists who didn't follow the rules were punished or driven out. The colonies of Connecticut and Rhode Island were started by those who left Massachusetts. They created different sets of rules for religious practice. The colony of Maryland was set up in 1632 by a wealthy English family that was Catholic. This attracted other Catholics who were persecuted in England to settle in Maryland too. The colony of Pennsylvania was established in 1681 by a Christian group called the Quakers. They also faced problems in England, but believed in tolerance for other religions, not just their own. A piece of the glorious pie. The United States traces its roots to the English colonists. But England wasn't the only nation with a stake in North America. European nations competed with each other for the glory of controlling territory here. Having a piece of the New World pie let nations control strategic places like rivers and seaports that were critical for transporting goods around the globe from the New World. G number 4, gone. Europeans claimed the New World for themselves despite the fact that people had lived here for thousands of years. The Europeans encountered Native Americans from many tribes, such as the Delaware and the Iroquois. But as Europeans took over, the Native Americans were pushed out. In the 150 years after Columbus first arrived, the population of Native people dropped by 90%. That's like your class going from 30 students to just 3. Most of those died from European diseases they'd never been exposed to. In the coming decades, Native Americans would clash with Europeans in a desperate fight to stay on their native lands. Ultimately, they would be gone from most of those lands forever. Triangle trade. Trade between England and the American colonies was not just back and forth across the Atlantic. Africa and the West Indies played a significant role as the trade of enslaved Africans became more important to the colonies. The 3 continents, Europe, Africa, and North America, created the points of a large triangle that stretched across the Atlantic. Each stop on the trade route provided goods needed by the people at the next stop. Sometimes a ship would take the full triangular route, but others would go back and forth along one side of the triangle. Check out the map on the next slide to discover what these ships carried to and from each area. The main route starts in England, works its way to Africa, the West Indies, and North American ports, and then returns to England. The return routes on the map show what ships often carried if they focused on that segment instead of traveling the entire triangle. Here's what we need to do to finish up today. Number 1, take the quiz. You know the deal. 3 questions, 6 points total. 1 point just for answering a question, 2 points for getting it right, 0 points for not getting it done on time. Test questions come from the quizzes. Open book, open note, open internet, anything you can do to find the answers. Go back and listen to the video to find the answers. And then you also need to complete the review activities. They're checked for completion. Short answer test questions come directly from the review activities, and answers are provided on the following slides, along with guidance and instruction to find correct answers. Go ahead and get started on those on the next slide. Here's the map of the triangle trade routes that existed in the 1600s and the 1700s. Everywhere you see a solid line is a main route, and everywhere you see a dashed line is a return route. If you remember what we just read, we know that the return routes exist for ships that didn't want to go their entire way around the triangle. We're going to talk our way through each of the trips, starting with Trip A. Trip A goes from England to Africa. The English would send metals, cloth, alcohol, and weapons to Africa, and if somebody made the return trip, they would send gold, peppercorns, and ivory back to England. On Trip B, which goes from Africa to the West Indies, which are the little islands in the Caribbean, they would send mostly enslaved people and gold. And if a boat made the return trip, they would send tobacco, rum, and sugar back to Africa. From the end of Trip B, we go from the West Indies to the coast of what would become the United States. The most frequent things that would go from the West Indies to North America are enslaved people, sugar, and molasses, and occasionally livestock, lumber, grain, and meat would be returned to the West Indies. And then Trip D, the long trip back across the Atlantic. This is where a lot of what we would call raw materials would go from North America to England. This includes things like tobacco, furs, fish, lumber, shipbuilding materials, and occasionally the English would send back some manufacturer's good tea, spices, cloth, furniture, and luxury items. So if we look at the questions on the right side in map review, we're going to use the map to help us answer the following questions. For number 1, let's do it together. The term Middle Passage refers to the trip that enslaved Africans took across the Atlantic to the West Indies. Which trip is the Middle Passage on the map? Well, if I look at A, Trip A, I see nothing about enslaved Africans, so I don't think that's going to be it. If I look at Trip C does involve enslaved people, but it's from the West Indies to North America. And in my questions, I see it's from across the Atlantic to the West Indies, so I don't think it's that one either. Trip D, that's from North America to England. No enslaved people on that one, so it has to be Trip B will be our correct answer there. Number two, imported goods are things that are brought into the area. Exported goods are things that are sent out to other places. In the table below, list one import and export for each. I'm going to walk you through the example for England. I'm going to expect you to do Africa, the West Indies, and North America on your own. So if I look at this, what I need to be looking at is this little chart up here. So the first one, things that are going from North America to England, well, I kind of put that into a simple term like raw materials. So they are raw materials, things that you can take and make into other things were being sent into England because England had all the factories. North America didn't have too many factories at the time. What are they exporting? Well, we have manufactured goods, tea, spices, cloth, furniture, and luxury items, things that require factories to make. Well, I'm just going to call that manufactured goods. So I want you to look at the important charts. What is going in and out of Africa? What is going in and out of the West Indies? And what is going in and out of North America to fill in one more thing that is being imported and exported from the other important regions of triangle trade. And then we're going to wrap up by talking about which G motivates me. Read the 5 statements from people planning to move to the Americas. On the blank, write whether the person is motivated by gold, God, or glory. So what you're going to do is you're going to write either gold, God, or glory on the line below. Let's read number 1. All the other kings and queens have claimed land in the Americas, so I need to get some territory for my nation. Well, territory could definitely mean money, so gold could be reasonable. Doesn't really talk about religion here, so I don't think it's going to be God. And then glory, well, glory is kind of bragging rights and saying that you did something. So all the other kings and queens have claimed land in the Americas, so I need to get some territory for my nation. Well, it seems like they want to keep up with those kings and queens, so I'm going to go with glory here. Number 2, things are getting hard here at home. I have no land of my own to farm. Maybe I can get someone to hire me in Virginia. I could work and earn my own farm someday. Well, I'm going to focus on 2 keywords here. No land and my own. So in a lot of times, land was money. I talked about that earlier. Land can be almost always equal to money. So they want land, and they also want to have their own farm, because if you have your own farm, that's where that money comes from. So I'm going to let you figure that one out on your own. B, pick out your own colony. Each of the early American colonies had its own unique character and attracted different kinds of colonists from England. Draw lines to connect each English settler with the colony most suited to his needs. Let's do letter A. I am a Puritan and I'm tired of the Church of England. Where should I go? Maryland, Massachusetts, or Pennsylvania? For this one, think about where the Puritans landed, where you think of the Pilgrims landing. They landed in Massachusetts and it became very friendly towards the Puritans. So there's 3 left, and I do believe each one will get one. So that means that either Maryland, Massachusetts, or Pennsylvania will get an extra. And then let's look at this one. Which came first? Read each pair of events. Underline the event that happened first. So first one, number 1, Native American population shrank by 90%. Or Columbus lands in the Bahamas. This one's pretty straightforward. We're going to just underline the first one. Well, the Native American population didn't shrink before he got there. He had to get there first, so we're going to underline Columbus lands in the Bahamas. The next one, you will have to look very specifically, Massachusetts Bay or Connecticut, which one was settled first. You should be able to find that pretty easily in the writing. Wealthy Englishmen invested in American colonies, and explorers discovered natural resources like lumber, furs, and rich farmland. So think about what would happen. Would somebody invest in it, or would they go and find the resources first? I would let you take care of the other 2 on your own, and then we're going to go ahead and move on. So finish strong. Make sure you get all of your review activities done. They are pretty quick today, and make sure you get your quiz finished up as well. Let us know if you have any questions. Keep working hard.